Welcome everyone to an edition of Badger Beat down at the Big Ten Media Kickoff in Chicago. I'm Adam Mertz of the Wisconsin State Journal, joined by Andy Baggett, Tom Oates, and Tom Mulhern. Going to go over a quick couple of topics that were kind of came up in conversation down here. And we'll start with Tom Mulhern. The senior class this year has a chance to really put their stamp on this program, go to a third straight Rose Bowl. They brought down a couple of guys who kind of led by example through the years, and Mike Taylor, Ricky Wagner. Can you talk a little bit about those guys and also the class as a whole?
Well, it's a smaller class. I think there's 9 seniors, 7 starters, projected starters in the group, and it's just interesting at this event. Sometimes you get these outgoing personalities and guys who like to talk, and Monte Ball is certainly right there with some of the best talkers in the room, I'm sure. Did a great job handling all the questions today, 2 hours worth. But it's interesting to see some of the quieter guys who don't always say a lot and start to emerge their personalities, and I think Mike Taylor is a guy who really fits that. Admittedly was a quiet guy as a freshman, and now he's just more comfortable in the spotlight, and his personality starts to come out. I think Ricky Wagner is a work in progress. He would be the first to admit that. He's still kind of a quiet guy. But as their personalities emerge, I think the leadership qualities emerge too. So I think that's just an interesting thing to track as their senior seasons go along.
As an example, Kevin Zeitler last year. I think we were saying the same thing about Kevin Zeitler. He just was a kid who didn't have a lot. He probably had a lot to say, but he didn't say it. And all of a sudden, as a senior, when he became a team leader, his personality emerged, and he had a lot. We found out he had a lot to say, and I think you see that every year. It's kind of fun to watch, actually.
Tom Oates, you were talking yesterday. You wrote a column today about the divisions, and obviously the imbalance now with only 4 teams eligible to get to the Big Ten title game in the Badgers division. Is there a reason? Is there a way that Wisconsin does not get to that game?
Well, I think there's certainly a way. If you look at a schedule that includes Ohio State, which is going to be a very good team, Nebraska, Michigan State. I mean, there's a lot of good teams in the Big Ten, and as we've seen over the years, the lesser teams can certainly come up and bite you. The other thing that certainly could prevent that is Wisconsin at Purdue. I think if there's a consensus next best team in the leaders division after maybe Wisconsin and Ohio State, I think it would be Purdue. They were 4-4 last year. Danny Hope, this is his 4th year. They have skill players back. They have their defense is largely intact. I think if there's a chance of a team stepping up, it might be Purdue, and Wisconsin plays at Purdue. That could become a very big game in time.
And the party line I'm hearing from Brett Bielema is that those 2 teams are ineligible to compete in the Big Ten title game, but the games you play against them still count. So they are still factors in the division race by who they beat and who they lose to, so they're still going to be heard from.
And Penn State coach Bill O'Brien talked yesterday about, he's told his players that the other teams get to play in 1 bowl game, you're going to get to play in 7. They're referring to their home games, and that atmosphere is going to be there, and that support's going to be there. So there's a lot to play for. Wisconsin does go out to Penn State, and that may end up being a very interesting game by the end of it, depending on how things work out.
And one of the teams that's not eligible this year, Ohio State, you had a chance to talk to Brett today a little bit about how things developed between he and Urban Meyer last year. There was a little bit of friction during the recruiting process. Where do things stand in that relationship, and could you get any more details than the few that have been given out?
Well, Brett Bielema didn't want to talk about it very much. He said it's done. They discussed it. He and Urban Meyer met during a coaches meeting, Big Ten coaches meeting in February. As far as they're both concerned, it's over and done with. They're moving on. Urban Meyer said that he took the initiative in talking to Brett, because he woke up one morning and had a bunch of emails, had a bunch of people calling him, and was concerned, a little miffed about what was being said. Brett Bielema said according to Urban Meyer, said a lot of things were taken out of context. As far as they're concerned, it's all worked out. It was interesting to get some of the other Big Ten coaches, their perceptions of what was going to happen when the 2 finally met face-to-face to talk. Coaches talked about how impressed they were, how they handled their business, because they did it face-to-face. But Pat Fitzgerald, the Northwestern coach, also said it was very interesting because everybody knew that there was an elephant in the room and it had to get taken care of, and it did. And so right now, all things seem to be copacetic between Urban Meyer and Brett Bielema.
So, I mean, that's a rivalry, a kind of a coaching rivalry. It can be really fun to watch here, isn't it?
Become a program rivalry, irrespective of the coaches, I think. The games Wisconsin and Ohio State have played have been very big games, and I don't think anything will change in the next few years. So there's a rivalry there, and I don't think we've heard the last of Brett Bielema versus Urban Meyer bags. I really don't. I think this is going to be interesting to watch over the next few years.
And he said, too, the Penn State story has kind of overshadowed what would have been the biggest story in the Big Ten is Urban Meyer coming into the Big Ten, and Penn State's kind of overshadowed that a little bit. And I think Brett Bielema's feeling his oats a little bit and standing up as he's the old guard now. He's been in the conference a little bit, and he's kind of, standing up for them and against the new guy. And it's going to be really fascinating to watch how that plays out.
Got a little more than a month before the season opener. A lot of time to kick around a lot of the topics we discussed here today. And look forward to all our coverage on madison.com.